The film's title is Blood and Bone. We see a gang's presence inside a maximum security facility, and they going to the restroom where there a person with the name Bone. Danny cautions Bone the existence of a gang out there. When the gang members want murderers enter the restroom, Danny emerges from the Bone is informed by the gang boss that he will make. He now regrets not joining their band. When he informs the group, he removes his shirt, that he will present them with a possible escape. However, the gang's capo was making fun of what Bone had stated about the group. Leader strikes Bone, but Bone swiftly repels him. The gang members slapped and knifed him, try to break a Bone, yet he is proficient in battling them and succeeds in striking them. Minutes, he informs the gang boss that he must communicate a message to everyone, those who want to hurt him. Then Bone is released from jail and visits a. Then he meets the hotel to reserve a room. Tamara was the hotel's proprietor. She leads him to his room while narrating that she wants no issues with him. He claims he doesn't want anything from her. Difficulty with either Bone. Next, we move to the location of the street fights. There, he observes two people fighting, followed by the arrival of upscale vehicles, and James and his soldiers arrived, and then a named person was the fight's organizer. The following fight is announced via pinball. Two warriors engaged in a battle, and one of who was a guy who was employed by James, known as Hammerman, having won all of his battles without ever losing, and when a dispute breaks out between them, Hammerman scores the opposing combatant severely. Then Hammerman prevails in pinball combat. Then James is given the wager amount, and afterward, he exits the building by driving away. Despite being astonished by the pinball and the presence of Bone in the vehicle, believed he was robbing him, but Bone requests that he set up a fight for him. Hammerman Pinball initially rejects, firstly because it informs Bone he is an unproven boxer, and it costs a lot of money to put this together. Bone gives Pinball $250 to fight for him, informing him that is all he has. Watch James take a call from N. Franklin is a significant person. Also that James receives a request to remove a person. Darrell James concurs but observes Franklin is playing pinball while driving. Brings James a Bone and tells him that Bone is the newest combatant. James observes that Bone has been fixated on the duration of his relationship with Angela. James has been triggered by this, and he issues a caution. Angela, his companion, not to gaze at the Bone. Same to how Pinball cautions Bone. Replicate his actions with this chick. James leaves the area with his troops playing pinball. Prepares the Bones for a first-person conflict. There was a combatant confronting the Bone. Very huge individual. Nevertheless, Bone observes that when slowly moving, this individual, a combatant, is hit with a Bone to start the fight. Deals him a lethal blow, one that fought and was able to prevail in a short. With Bones, seconds Pinball was pleased, triumph, and he promises to do so. For him, arrange battles outside of the city to achieve fame, after which he will set up a game for him and Hammer. Pinball was discussing Angela with Bone. James's pal informed him that she was married and carrying a child. A second man. Then James snatched her away from her. When he plotted against her, she was forced to leave her spouse and threw him in for a murder. He informs him that James hid in a jail. Angela and her child are in an unidentified, in which Angela was intoxicated, and her life had gotten so bad. Jim and Darrell was eating supper with his crew, alongside his girlfriend, Franklin, that he should drop James' inquiries and Darrell's girlfriend to perform music before he sings and requests that everyone join him. Nevertheless, Jimmy immediately pulls out a sword, stabs Darrell with a board. Next asks Hammerman should intensify the music after that, till he murders. We watch Bone hits Darrell. James is also visible in his hotel room. He is upset at seeing Angela at home for not paying him any attention at her. James spent the second day with one of their men. Teddy displays a clip of his victory in the Bones battle. Jim inquires him to get all of the data onto the Bone. Tamara is there, and she may be seen in the hotel. Notices the meeting Gerard had with. She urges him to remain because of street gangs. Old Roberto begged them to get away from them, leaving the area, but they disapproved and continued to curse Roberto when the Bone arrived, and they rapidly fled. Pinball appears in, take a Bone in the vehicle with him, and they attend a street brawl in a. Two girls were present at a different location, arguing, and one of the females called the police, who was able to prevail in the fight. Verita. Pinball is won by a man named Tattoo, who agreed with him and had fighters plan a duel between Bone and one of them. Before the bout, the Tattoo fighters. First, Bone discovers that his opponents he was striking, his shoulder dipping. In addition, as the combat starts, Bone beats his opponent with a lethal blow. With a single blow, Happy Pinball tells Tattoo that Bone can defeat two opponents simultaneously by tattooing. Informs him that fighters are standing by. Pinball believes the bet is involved. Time the conflict starts, has doubled Bone. Eliminates the first combatant with a tremendous strike, after which they struck a second individual who broke his hand. Bone reveals he has a tattoo and is prepared to battle once more. 10 fighters are asked for doubles on bet. Tattoo combating Bone. Bone was able to eliminate all of them with bone-crushing strikes. The proceeds from forced tattooing because tattoo on the bone Virta was holding a pistol. She handed him her since she was bone-obsessed. Number 1 continues to practice before. Street battles are organized for him by Pinball, and Bone prevails in every battle. Earth and Pinball generate enormous wealth and appear to be gaining notoriety. Takes part in bouts with big stakes and also triumphs in every battle we see. Returning to the motel, and the next day, notices he has a little wound, so she heals his injury, Bone, and inquires about the. She has kids with her, and she shares. She has been looking after him since roughly 3 years ago, yet the child he's been receiving attention from Gerard. Tomorrow has only been a supporter for a year. Takai Bone explains the fundamentals of. On the second day, she sees him do sports. The fundamentals of this sport to Gerard. James was driving his automobile and pursuing a female, because he thought the girl may have released details about him, and the girl asked him to stop attacking her. Still James. She was run over by a vehicle. Roberto looks what James did, instructing Teddy to, and James. Bone's fight date departs in a Hummer. Male passenger in the vehicle. Teddy was using drugs prior to facing. James is informed via Bone Pinball that the Bone will win the fight, as the combatants train to. To begin the altercation, the Hummer guy was attempting to strike a quick and agile Bone, able to avoid the punch before the Bone strikes. The several hits of the Hummer guy, and then the Hummer man can't dodge it. Uses his foot to knock out a Homer guy. Bone is crowned the winner in Pinball, and afterward, it proceeds to remove the winning wager from James, who was furious. Was followed by James asks Bone to join them at supper, so they then play pinball and celebrate his triumph. When Bone went to James's place, stares at the girl, Angela, as he sees her. As James discovers this, he places a Bone. Follow him to the workplace. James informs Bone he regards all combat sports, then displays to him a boneless samurai sword. Reveals to James his lack of proficiency with. James then discusses swords with Bone, Franklin, and informs him of his greatness. He is informed by an arms dealer that Franklin, operating a multi-million international combat sport, has a combatant who has never lost any conflict, and he intended to set up he and this person got into a brawl, which was going to cost $5 million. James Jane explains to Bone that he will get wealthy if he defeats him and never needs him to fight once again. Bone assures him he will consider it. James observes the Bone is still observing who has been Angela, searching for narcotics James has stashed away. Angela is instructed by James to enter the room. As he worked to persuade Bone to join them, take a gun and yells threats at Bone. Attempts to speak to her, but Bone recognized her. Considering that Danny's pal was incarcerated, he had suggested both her and his kid, Bone's best buddy, before he was slain. Danny, who is married to Angela, traveled to, due to James's hiring, jail, a prison group working to eliminate Danny. Bone asks Angela responsible for what occurred to her. She informs him that James is the one, though, who, after he had her stay with him, she murdered her spouse and kidnapped her son, who she does not know the location of. Bone has till now told her that he is aware when and where her son will arrive, or to him, after which the two proceed to look like they're enjoying themselves together. James is asked by Bone to accompany Angela on a. Angela is taken to, while James concurs, by Bone, a facility for treatment and rehabilitation for drug abuse, and then transports her to watch her son. James visits Franklin. He had $5 million in his house, money to pay Franklin in return for permitting Bone to battle with you. At first, his opponent, Franklin, rejects him. Was racist when he spoke with James, but Franklin ultimately consented to set up informing him that there will be a battle. Start 3 days later, the Bone is astonished by the police's presence, which discovered dead Roberto. Tomorrow was terribly hurt by Roberto's death. Bone reveals who was to blame. Roberto was assassinated by James' soldiers because Roberto saw James murder a girl. Bone was consoling Tamara as he was with her. James' presence in the room surprises her to the bone. The space. James was taken aback by his. Angela, who had abducted her, was able to depart with him and join Tamara in her seat. Informed him that he had set up a fight with Franklin's fighter, but Bone, for him. James is shocked when he reveals to him that he is still considering it after he decides not to engage in combat after giving it some thought. James was enraged and informed him that he had a wager of $5 million was made. James was ready to draw the sword, but the Bone stopped me. Strike him. After blocking him, James seizes Tamara, yells as the rifle is pointed at her. He knows he will lose if he doesn't fight. Kill her and every child she has. Once James had left, Bone asked Tamara to go someplace with the kids. Otherwise, Tamara was briefly without any. She had no option but to ask him that. She didn't want him around when he returned. James instructs Teddy to remove the Bone, and Tamara Hummer Man visits a pinball machine, and he queries him as to where Bone is. Strikes Pinball, but a Bone comes quickly and succeeds in killing Hammerman to murder James and his daughter, other guys. James visits James and informs him of location of Angela since she was the same facility for treatment. James requests Teddy to go murder Angela. Then when When they enter the space, they discover he is in the room with Pinball and, aiming a rifle at them, a bone emerges behind them and kills everyone who is hit by it. Teddy was slain by them and a pinball when James made an effort to reach Teddy. Bone retorted to him, informing him that he would have slain all of his guys, coming for the killers, too. James transmits his location to Bone and calling Franklin after that, and advises him that the battle should. Today's game proceeds benefit Franklin's mansion. James' location is the reason for this. Jimmy enters and stands by him. They had James and Franklin with them. Eminent persons gathering to see the fight between Franklin's fighter and the Bone. Bone is informed by James that if he doesn't fight, and he'll murder him tomorrow as well. James is warned by Bone that he will be killed for the murder of his prison-bound pal Danny. James knew Bone wished to keep Angela safe. James admits to killing Danny and Roberto, yet he had no idea what that Bone was recording everything before sending a pinball video. Who informed the cops? The warrior for James. Franklin comes. He declares he intends to murder Bone. Bone puts up a fight as the other fighter did. Laughing at Bone, the conflict starts, and Bone recognizes the high skill level of his opponent. Nonetheless, Bone triumphs after dealing. He struck his opponent multiple times. Still Bone, before the game's conclusion, and he accomplished this in a way that startled everyone. James needed to lose his money in order for equivalent to $5 million that Jim receives. Enraged, he pulls out a blade and attempts to destroy Bones. Franklin directs his troops to a weapon against Bone so that the conflict will be impartial. James is taken aback when a Bone has sword proficiency, which contrasts with what he previously told him. Bone was able to sever James's arm, then run away. The scene after the cops had shown up to detain the dangerous James, and promising him that he would lie to him. Angela finishes off her visits the hotel for treatment because Tamara was parenting Gerard, who is her son. Finally, Angela and her kid are together, reunited. Tamara and fresh Bone was in the background, and she was aware of his visit's motivation. This hotel served to preserve Gerard. Angela requests that Bone accompany them to the motel. Nonetheless, he informs her that his goal is. He requests her permission to let Angela and son to remain with her. He emerges from. He bids them goodbye and returns to the hotel. Also says goodbye to Pinball and promises him he won't engage in combat ever again. James was housed in the same prison where the Bone was at first in the movie. Franklin requests that the group beat up James, following his threat. And here, thank you for watching. The film concludes. If you liked the video, don't forget like, share, and subscribe.